Senator Alma Francis Heiliger, you are recognized for your 4 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon to the people of this territory. Good afternoon to the testifiers. I want to jump right in and ask my first question in regards to the Department of Labor. As it relates to the particular case, Bostock versus Clayton, in regards to discrimination for orientation, where the Supreme Court on June the 15th, 2020, decided that underneath the category of sex, that sexual orientation and gender falls under that, and these protections currently exist throughout the law and is the law of the land. What have you done as the Department of Labor to make sure that processes that are in place based on this Supreme Court ruling in 2020 have afforded individuals the ability to come in with their concerns, seeing that this is currently law in the United States and here in the territory?
Good morning. Thank you for the question, Senator. Nisha Christian Hendrickson, Assistant Commissioner Legal Counsel for the Virgin Islands Department of Labor. Currently, we have a process that allows individuals to come in to the department or to file online if they feel that they've been discriminated against in any category, including sex or sexual orientation. Mm-hmm. Typically, during this month in September, we have outreach to individuals in the community in a variety of topics. And in many years in the past, we have done it on sexual orientation, sexual harassment, excuse me. And so that's some of the things that we are doing here at the department to make sure that people are aware of their protections and how to file.
Well, since this ruling in 2020 that also put sexual orientation and gender underneath the category of sex, the Supreme Court did so. What have you done to publicly educate the public to let them know that this was now an additional protection afforded them based on the Supreme Court ruling?
We have not, since the time of 2020, have done a training specifically on this additional protection. However, when individuals come to the department in concerns of discrimination, and typically speaking, if they do, it's on a variety of topics, we would then so educate them. But we will take that information into account that in the future we should provide more education on this particular area.
When it comes to privately owned businesses, how do you plan on addressing? I know we could tackle and getting it implemented across the board government. It's a lot easier. How do we handle in making sure that this aspect of law, which I'm sure my colleagues and myself will support to codify it here locally in the code, seeing that it's already part of, since the Supreme Court ruling, I'm asking you, what are we going to do to help educate the private sector and some of their concerns, or how do we get them to understand that this is something they would have to follow?
Well,
any plans on public education? What are your thoughts?
Well, one of the ways that we have found very successful here at the Department of Labor is in our webinars. In fact, right now, as we speak, there's a webinar happening that is covering a variety of topics, including labor relations at the Department of Labor. So what we have found that by having webinars targeted at employers, they really have been coming to them in great numbers, and we find that that is the best way to be able to provide the information. We have done monthly webinars in the workforce development area, as well as yearly webinars. So we have found that to be most effective to get the information out, as well as, of course, we require that there is posters on the wall that explain to employees about their protections, that we have legislation that has been passed in reference to those protections. So there's a variety of means, both regulatory compliance and as well as education, to make sure the word gets out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have you had any specific rulings in anyone coming in and filing sexual orientation cases with your department, and you had to participate in trying to put out any rulings or decisions on their behalf? Has any of this happened? Or do you keep track of these types of cases?
Assistant Commissioner Legal Counsel Nisha Krishna Hendrickson for VIDOL. Currently, we have a broad category of discrimination that we create data on. I currently have the director looking through the numbers to ensure if there's a way to parse out in reference specifically to sexual orientation. But typically speaking, for privacy reasons, we don't usually pull those numbers out. So I can't speak to that number currently, but she's investigating that, and I'll get back to the committee.
Okay. Well, could I just finish?
You may wrap up, Senator.
I appreciate you. As it relates to the specific case I've referenced here, I think it's a good thing that our Supreme Court had already intercepted and recognized that sexual orientation and gender is integral when it comes to the sex part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But what I will say is that once we get it codified here in the code, that it's going to be a continued part here in our territory, and it would be an educational piece so that people will know the importance of making sure that they also have these protections afforded to them, even here in the territory right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The chairman of the board, is she available?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Could you please respond to the question?
It's a multifaceted question, but I think I'll answer how I can. The problem. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you, but I don't want to keep stalling my time. So.
Yeah, but it's not me. There's major problems. Yes, there's major problems with the executive directors that do not follow protocol. And what I would like to suggest to each and every senator that's interested, that we, the board, hold a meeting so that we can lay out everything where went wrong, what's going wrong, what has been done, what has not been done.
So you're telling me that you believe it's so much going on, and we need to take time out again to have a private meeting with you guys. Okay. The next question I want to ask has to do with the bylaws and the completion of them. Do you guys have any standard operations that you're going to be dealing with until these bylaws are completed? Because it seems that there's still some major issues as to how you function. The acting executive director or the board can share with me your thoughts on that.
Well, I know recently we hired an attorney, and we were operating on Title III, Section 274. That was our guide for the most part. But we since hired an attorney and who is working on the bylaws. We have some drafted bylaws.
Is there a time frame for the completion of those bylaws?
It's just he's working on a number of things, and so I will try. And honestly, I'll try to get back with you to give you a date when it will be finished. It has been sent to the board for review.
Okay.
And only heard from one member.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm gonna just wrap up on my thoughts. I, as a first-term senator here, I've listened to quite a bit of testimony coming from former employees. I've listened to the board, and this seems to come across to me from somebody who's for the first time hearing some of these issues. It seems like a power struggle. And what this legislation is attempting to do is potentially shift where that power lies to potentially bring about a better solution to the execution of hiring employees at the Taxi Cab Commission. I don't want anyone to have the impression that this is a personal situation or, agendas that are coming from the senators, because for me, I am not a taxi, but I'm their representative. And if I'm consistently hearing concerns, if I'm consistently getting complaints, simple things, even speaking to the taximen on the street, dealing with enforcement and certain concerns that they have, you know, how do we get to a point that there's a balance that people can be hired without all these multiple levels of bureaucracy that the law allows? Because I'm not putting it on you, is how the law is currently written, because the same way that senators can write laws, we can change them. And if we're constantly seeing that an issue lies, we have the ability and the right to step in and say, you know what? This is something we need to amend and fix. So I personally am in support of changing this. I was in support of it from the last time this young man was here. I think his name was Shane, and he was describing some of his concerns and issues. And I didn't believe that this is what he was dealing with. But at the end of the day, it is my hope that if we are able to utilize, by changing this law and trying to give this taxi cab a little bit more balance, because that is what I'm seeing. I was able to participate in a couple of the town halls where the other former executive director was at, where they were collecting all of the fees from the taxi drivers. I personally thought she was doing a pretty good job. I was very impressed by the way she was working, and I thought that the commission was going up. But to hear the testimony today, I mean, you would think that, you know, something have a disconnect. There's a very huge disconnect between the board and who's dealing with the day-to-day operations. So I am in support of this piece of legislation, and I hope it brings about some resolve. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for the time.
Heiliger. Senator Francis Heiliger, you're recognized for your point of inquiry.
Well, I'm here chuckling because that is basically the question I was trying to understand, because from her testimony, it came across as if though she was acting, but then we heard the member said she's full-fledged executive director, and I'm sitting here, well, maybe they didn't bother to even tell her. I'm trying to listen. This whole thing needs to get fixed. I'm a little concerned here.
And more, Senator Francis Heiliger, you are recognized for your point of inquiry.
Through the chair to board member Watley. The question I want to ask quickly, has there been any hirings on the board without full board approval? Because I'm hearing a lot of conversations in regards to people being hired. There might be two boards. And I know what the law currently says, that the board as a whole would have to vote. Has there been any hirings by the board without full board participation?
That I have to think about. Well, you said without full board participation. That could mean a lot of things. That could mean that members were absent.
No.
And we're not.
Were the board privy to hirings? Y'all were told y'all had a chance to participate in voting. That's what I'm trying to get to. Or was it a situation of some board members unilaterally believe they have the right to hire and fire on their own? That is what I'm trying to get to.
Well, I'll separate the question. Yes, I believe that there are board members that feel they unilaterally have the right to make decisions for the board without the entire board's input. That's a fact. Okay. As far as hiring is concerned, and initially, like I said, without bylaws, there cannot be subcommittees. One of the subcommittees that we had tried to create was a human resources committee, which would have addressed hiring individuals or candidates.
So based on your testimony,
Senator Francis Heiliger, I am